Hi, and welcome to the July Family Day. My name is Riley Thorne. I'm the program's assistant here at SUMA, and today we're going to be painting monochromatic mountains. So the materials you'll need today, we're going to be using paint, but you can also use colored pencils or crayons or oil pastels, whatever you have around your house. To get started, you're going to need to print out this coloring page. It's found at the SUMA at Home website, as well as this scale practicing page found in the same place. To start, you're going to want to pick out a color from the color wheel, your favorite color or a color you like all of the shades of. Today we used red to get shades of pink and dark red, but you can also use blue or any color on the wheel. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're inspired by the exhibit Our Natural World, which is a series of black and white photographs created by SUU Jumpstart students who were inspired by the work of Brett Weston. These are black and white photographs that they went and took of surrounding landscapes and major landmarks and things like that, which is why we chose to do the mountain landscape, which goes along really well with monochromatic scale and color. That exhibit is up through August, online or in person, so come check it out. So let's get started with painting. You're going to print out these two worksheets. This one is the mountains that we'll be painting last, and these are the scales that you'll need first. So we're going to practice on our scales because monochromatic color scale making is new to a lot of you. So we're going to practice here and then move on to painting the mountains when we are ready. So today I'm going to be painting red mountains, kind of like you can see right here. And so we'll start the red scale. There's 7 blocks on the scale because there's 7 layers on the mountain. And for each layer of the mountain, you're going to want a different color because of the way monochromatic works is it adds depth to paintings. So the closest, I'll show you this one. The closest is the darkest because it's what's closer to you and it's what you can see the best. And as it goes up and farther away, it gets lighter. And that's true in life as well. As you're standing outside and you're looking off into the distance, what's closer to you is going to be more saturated and more vibrant, and what's farther away looks a little bit faded and less saturated. So let's get started painting our scale. On the far end, you're going to start with white, and on the farther end, you're going to start with black, just to make sure that you have those two that will be on your painting, and then you know how to fill in between. We'll start with white. You don't need a lot of paint for this, especially when you're mixing colors. You want to make sure that you're not wasting any paint because it can be kind of hard to mix colors. So start with a little bit and then move up closer, adding more paint as you get closer to the color that you want. Awesome, so I've got white on that side. Next I'm going to start by adding a little bit of red to my white. Red is the strongest color on the color wheel, so you want to make sure that you don't add too much, but you want to make sure it's enough to show that it's not white anymore, but it's a step down on the scale. So with that one, I added a little bit too much red, so I'm going to go in and add a little bit more white to get it closer to the light pink that I'm wanting, the light red. So as you can see, I mixed the red and I added a little bit too much red to the white. So as I mixed that, I realized that that would be a great next step color, but not for the step that I'm working on. So I moved a little bit of that color into the next well over on my palette and added more white, and that's closer to the color that I want for my scale. This is definitely an experiment deciding what colors you want on your scale and what you think is going to look the best. So just keep trying to get exactly the color that you want and make sure that it fits within the monochromatic scale. And if you don't have a palette, that's totally okay. You can use a paper plate or whatever you have around your house that you can take up space on and mix lots of colors. There's that next step. Between steps, make sure you wash out your brush so that you're not getting, you're not mixing the colors too much on the scales. All right. Next I have this darker pink. And in the middle will be red because that's the base color. And so when you're moving your way down from white, you're just trying to get as close to red as possible with still adding white or not just red, whatever color that you choose to use. So there's my scale so far. I'm going to keep rinsing out my brush, and then I'm going to do the red color and then start adding black and keep going down the scale. Awesome, now that I have my red painted, I'm gonna start adding black. Black is also a very strong color, so you wanna make sure that you only add a tiny bit, especially for the 2 steps in the middle before you get to the just black color. So I'm gonna start with just a little bit of black on my palette in this separate well, and then I'm gonna take a tiny bit with my brush so I'm not directly mixing the 2 paints in the same well, just because that will get a little bit overwhelming in color. I'm just gonna take a little bit of black, kind of take off the extra, and then mix it in with the red. So that made a pretty good red color, a little bit darker than a red, which is exactly what we're looking for. Awesome. Next, I'm in a separate well, I'm gonna take a little bit of that darker red color and put it in there, and then get a little bit more black with my brush and mix it in that way so that neither color is too powerful or too overwhelming. And like you can see, I don't have a lot of paint in this well. You don't need to mix a ton. As you're painting your mountains, you might need to mix a little bit more, just so you're not wasting paint. So the last step is black. Gotta make sure you get all the red color out of the paintbrush before you paint the plain black. All right, so that is how you make a monochromatic scale, starting with the base color and then adding white to get to the lightest form and black to get to the darkest form. Next, we're gonna use this scale and the colors you mixed on your palette to fill in the mountains. Okay, so now we're gonna start to paint our mountains. A lot like with the scale, you're gonna start with white at the very top and work your way down so that the darker colors, if you make a mistake, will overlap the lighter colors and you won't be able to see it. So let's start with white. You might need to mix more colors on your palette if you run out. If you've been working with the same brush the whole time, you might get some little pink streaks up in your white, which is totally fine. But if you want to rinse it out better so that that doesn't happen, then feel free to do that. Okay, so there's my white with little streaks of pink because I didn't clean the brush out all the way. But when you start to get closer to the lines, like I said, it's okay if you overlap because the darker colors will cover it and you won't see it, but make sure that you're being as precise as possible when you get closer to those lines. So I'm gonna move down the scale. And the next color is this pink color, and it is already right here on my palette. Something that might help as you paint these is using a smaller brush to get in those little crevices, but if not, then you can just be super careful. Awesome, there's my next layer done. I'm gonna keep moving down the scale. The next color is the darker pink. Like I said before, you can use any color you want from the color wheel, just making sure that you are adding the right amount of white or black depending on what shade you're wanting to use. So as you go down, you might run out of certain colors, so just make sure that you mix it as close as possible to the original color on the scale, and you'll be fine. Awesome, that is the next step down. The one after this is just the pure red color. So the black paint is where it starts to get really hard to make sure you get the same color as your scale. So do the best you can, but as long as it looks a little bit different, then you'll be totally good. Awesome, so I'm down to my last color, which is black. Okay, so there's how you paint your monochromatic mountains. It's definitely easiest to do this with paint, but you can do it in colored pencil or crayon or oil pastel. I put some examples on this scale so that you can see it there, and I will show you how best to do that on this one. So just like with the paint, you want to start with white on the lighter side and then start with black on the darker side. Putting white down first will make a difference when you start to lightly put over the red so that you can see the bigger difference between the lighter pink and the darker pink. So I started by coloring the first 3 boxes white because those are the colors that we add white to get the more pinkish color before we get to red. And the best way to get the color that you're looking for is to start really, really light with the red. So the first box will stay white, and then the second box is where you'll start to add the red to get a little bit pink. So go ahead and start really, really soft at first, not really putting a whole lot of color down, really, really light to make sure that we get the pink color that we want. All right, so we have a little bit of pink there. If you're using colored pencil, you can go in with an eraser and kind of blend them a little bit better. For the next box, I'll draw a little bit darker with my red to get the color that I want. Another way that you can do this is by thinking about monochromatic scale and how we would make it by adding white and adding black, but you can grab any colors out of your colored pencils that would work. So we have red, but then you could do a darker pink and then a lighter pink and then white, and then a darker red and then a darker red and then black. There's lots of different ways that you could do it. That might be easier than trying to blend the colors, but for the sake of learning how to do a monochromatic scale, that is how we wanted to show you. So for this box, I'm pressing a little bit harder on the red to get it a little bit darker red, and mixing with the whites, making it a lot darker pink, closer to the red color. And then for the black, the red will be in the middle. Then you'll press really hard to make sure the red color is there in the middle. And then on this other side, you're gonna do the same thing, but instead of doing light with the red, you're gonna do really, really light with the black. Starting the lightest here in the first box, and then a little bit darker in the next box, and then dark black, only black in the last box. So you can see the changes from this one to this one. I'm just pressing differently. So on this black one, I want to get it all the way black, so I'm pressing really hard. Not hard enough to break it, but just hard enough to make sure that the color really, really shows up. And then on these ones, I just kind of want it to be a shade instead of the color itself. So I'm just going to go a little bit lighter. And then come in and add the red. So even before blending it with an eraser, you can see the difference between the red, plain red in the middle, and the darker red, the red with a little bit of black. So just go through and kind of play around with it. Make sure that you're getting the colors you want while still working in the monochromatic scale. Like I said, you can use other colors that besides red from your crayon box, like pink or darker pink, and just play around with monochromatic scale. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We're so excited to see your mountains, so tag us at Summa_museum or with the hashtag SummaAtHome, and thanks for tuning in.